Okay, welcome to another episode of Jeff Smith's Garage. We've already done one engine combo on LS's, and so I thought we would do Big Block Chevys. So what this will be is a little introduction on street combinations for Big Block Chevys that work really well that I've run over the years of doing all kinds of dyno tests and all kinds of different parts and stuff like that. And we also have some information from a buddy of mine's car that's not quite a daily driver in a little 66 El Camino that runs really good, but we'll get into the details. Let's talk about camshafts. Hydraulic rollers are really what I would suggest now. Of course, I'm not one having to pay for it, and they are expensive, but they're really worth it in terms of reduced maintenance. You get a lot more area under the curve out of a roller cam than you will out of a flat tappet cam. Yeah, they're more expensive. Even the lifters now, a really high quality lifter is going to cost you almost $1,000, $850 for a good one. But I think that it's well worth the money and zero maintenance. They run forever. It's really a good idea. So in the packages that we've come up with, I've run across one particular cam that seems to work really well. It's nice compromise between decent power and drivability and decent idle vacuum. So it's a comp cams. It's a 288, 282, 288, 232, 230, 236, 510, 520 lift. It's a nice little camshaft. We'll give you all these part numbers at the end of the video, so don't have to rush around and try and write stuff down. But this cam works really, really well. We did actually a 3-cam comparison where we did the baby bear, the mama bear, and the papa bear cams. And the papa bear cam made the most power, made the most horsepower, but this middle cam really worked well on the street, and it'll idle at about 12, 13 inches of manifold vacuum, which is almost enough to run your power brakes. Not quite, but almost. And, but it's a nice stable camshaft, decent idle quality out of it, and for street driving, the thing makes just a ton of torque down low. I think on Eric, we put this camshaft in my buddy Eric's 468 El Camino, and I think that thing makes like 500 foot-pounds of torque at 3,000, something like that. It's a crazy number. So it's a really torquey camshaft. Your biggest problem will be keeping back tires on your car, I think. So that's the cam that I'd recommend. There are others. Obviously, you can go smaller, larger, depending upon your predilections, but I would say that that's a good way to go. Okay, so let's talk about cylinder heads now. Our prop motor here is actually a 489, which is a 30 over stroker. Actually 427, but 427, 44, same bore. So in this particular motor, it has a set of rectangle port big block heads from 1967, L88 style. These babies have been around the block a few times. But if you've got a set of rectangle port heads, it's not a big deal. You can run them, they work just fine. But the majority of stuff we're going to talk about today will be oval ports, because milder big block street motors, you can make really good velocity and really good torque, and you don't really give up much in terms of horsepower as long as you're going with a mild cam. There's no advantage to running a rectangle port head because the additional airflow is not going to be there for you because of the cam timing. So in terms of cylinder heads, we've found that even those old 454 oval port heads work really well. My buddy Eric's engine's got a set of ported oval port heads on his engine, and it makes really good power. Problem is they're getting hard to find. So the stuff that's out there right now, we did a test for CarCraft several years ago when I was still there on oval port heads for Big Block Chevys, and we actually did 4 cylinder heads along with a peanut port as a baseline. But of those heads at the time, Airflow Research was not building an oval port head, but they do now. But we'll have AFR, Edelbrock, Dart, TFS, and Brodix all make a good oval port head. And we've got all the part numbers and those things at the end of this video, so you can see all that stuff. But among those heads, all those heads really, except for the AFRs, we weren't testing them back then because AFR didn't build a head back in 2008 when we did this test. But among the other ones, they all performed pretty well. They were all right there in a bunch, and there really wasn't a whole lot of difference between the two. So what you really come down to is how much are these heads going to cost? And of the two, the price leaders really were and still are the Edelbrock Performer RPM oval port and the TFS head, which did really, really well in our particular test. So you might want to take a look at one of those in terms of more of a budget approach. If you're looking for more peak power, you can run a little bit more camshaft. The Dart, the Brodix are right there, and the AFRs are right there, and will make you really good power. So I would recommend one of those heads for a combination. Again, around 10 1/4 to 1 compression ratio, and you'll be right there. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about intake manifolds. For you older hot rodders that know all this stuff, this will be old hat, but for your younger guys that may not know, we'll go over it real quickly for you. So this is a dual plane intake manifold. This is a single plane intake manifold. This particular one, dual plane, you can see there's a divider here, two separate channels. There's a high channel and a low channel, and it separates into 4 runners for each channel. And what it does is it lengthens the runner length, and what it does, it tends to add torque, but the other aspect of it is it tends to limit the peak horsepower number. Single plane intake manifold, you can see, is a little bit different. There's this big open plenum right here, and it feeds all 8 ports in all at once. This tends to work very well for better high horsepower and peak RPM applications. And a lot of it has to do with the height. The taller the manifold, and both these applications actually, the taller the manifold is, the more power you're going to make, because it tends to separate the bottom of the carburetor from the bottom of the intake manifold. So it allows the fuel to make the turn into the intake manifold. But it really comes down to which application. So if you've got a big displacement motor like a 489, 496, 540, you could put a single plane on there and not really give up a lot of torque. But for a 396 or a 427 or a 402 big block Chevy, be better off with a dual plane manifold on the street because it'll make more torque. Then as far as carburetors, a 750 is a good average carburetor to do. This happens to be an 850 Ultra HP carburetor. Kind of expensive, but really nice piece, and will make more power. A little bit larger carburetor will make ultimate more power because it slows the velocity down through the carburetor, but it tends to kind of give you some problems in terms of off-idle stuff and things like that. It's all tunable, but again, that's a whole nother video we can do for you. But so a 750 is a good average carburetor, and then if you're looking for more peak power, an 850 is a better way to go. So let's kind of wrap this whole thing up now. Again, we're talking about street motors, mild street engines, hydraulic roller camshafts. So the camshaft we talked about earlier, his engine is a 468 and a little 66 El Camino, but we put it on the dyno out at West Tech, and with a dual plane intake manifold and a carburetor on it, it made 540 foot-pounds of torque at 3,000. I mean, that will annihilate your tires. Peak horsepower wasn't all that great, 527, but it made 577 for torque at 3,900. So it's a lot of torque, and it's smooth. I mean, you can bury this thing on the throttle in second gear on a Turbo 400, for example, and it'll just push you back in the seat and just hold you there. It's a lot of fun. Rat motors are great about that. So this particular engine, 489, we actually dyno tested this one with exactly the same camshaft, the kind of the Mama Bear camshaft we talked about, 230, 236. Again, with a single plane intake manifold and an 850 carburetor, this rascal made 602 foot-pounds of torque at 3,900, but with the mild cam, it only made 550 for horsepower. So at about 55, 5,600. So again, the larger displacement kind of makes the camshaft look smaller. But what we're talking about here is killer torque, great street power, idle really good, be a great combination for the street. So if you really like what we're talking about here at Jeff Smith's Garage, all these engine combinations and tech tips and things like that, subscribe, ring the bell, tell your friends, and we'll keep cranking these videos out for you. Jeff Smith's Garage.